Hello, I'm going to link flat earth to Zionism, the Jews, the Jesuits. Should be a good conversation. I'd like to start with a book written by J.R. Church called Guardians of the Grail. It discusses how, all the way back in the book of Genesis, Jacob gave all of his sons a prophecy regarding their future and the future of their tribes. The least desirable was that given to Dan. The prophecy said that he would be a snake in the path. And this is reminiscent of the Garden of Eden and Satan himself. It also says that he would bruise the heel of the rider. Well, interestingly, in Genesis chapter 3, you've got a prophecy of a bruised heel being the seed of the woman getting his heel bruised by the seed of the serpent. So if Dan's progeny will bruise the heel of the rider, that seems like a pretty direct reference to Jesus. The seed of the woman is Jesus. Now, you go on also, and you find out that in Revelation, Jesus is described as riding a white horse with a sword in Revelation 19. Now, you go into that prophecy of Dan, and then you take it to Revelation, where it's talking about the Jews that would be a remnant, 144,000. Now, the tribes are given for each group, and the tribe of Dan is completely left off. Okay? When you look at the book of Judges, the tribe of Dan is one of two places where uncondoned altars have been erected. Later on, one is destroyed by Josiah, a righteous king. But you don't hear what happened to the one in Dan because the people of Dan left town. When they first moved into Canaan, they were all told to kill all the Canaanites and take over. Well, some of them didn't. And Balaam, a false prophet, a nefarious false prophet, advised the people that were getting conquered, Israel's enemies, to send their women in and seduce them. And sure enough, it worked. And a lot of the Danites married into Canaan, married the women. And they took a lot of their religion. And not only that, they never completely conquered the land. They ended up moving. They moved north, which would put them right along the curve, right up in through Turkey into Europe. A lot of places in Europe bear his name. The Danube River, Denmark, the Danish people, but not just Denmark, throughout Europe. Okay, so you've got this Jewish influence going up there, and actually it's Canaanite influence. Dan was a failure. All right, as far as the tribes go, Dan was a failure before God. Now, there's a lot of conquering, a lot of spreading of religion. This is probably where a lot of the Greek mythology and Roman mythology is so close to that of Canaanite religion. It's because Dan brought it with him. After the fall, or around the fall of the Roman Empire, the French, the barbarians in France, really became the power in Europe. And one of the first kings was Merovich in the 400s. His progeny lasted on the throne for more than 300 years. They were deposed in 752 by the Carolingian dynasty. The Merovingians, named after their father Merovich, Merovich had a birthmark, an even-sided cross on his heart, and it was red. This is where we get the Red Cross today, even-sided. Now, his progeny were on the throne for a long time, and when the Carolingians took over, one of the first things they did is they married Merovingian wives. The reason is, the Merovingians, according to legend, could do miracles. They were hardcore into the occult and witchcraft, and this goes along with that pagan religion. And they all had long hair, which is reminiscent of a famous Danite, Samson. Um, and their symbols, they took the bees, which makes you think of Samson eating the honey out of the lion. And the lion is another. Bees and a lion. Okay. So the Merovingians, they claim descendants, a divine right to the throne. In my opinion, that's probably because they actually have mixed blood with fallen angels, which are pagan gods. All pagan gods are fallen angels. But according to movies like The Da Vinci Code, books like The Da Vinci Code, books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, a lot of European royalty believe that their blood ties to the Merovingian line actually lead to Jesus and Mary Magdalene. It makes me want to vomit. But anyways, that's what they believe. And they believe that through Jesus they go back to David, and so they're appointed to the throne. And that's their divine right. And that's why the Carolingians married into the Merovingian daughters. The Stuarts did the same thing. You look at Napoleon Bonaparte, in one of his famous pictures, he's wearing a robe covered in bees. And yes, he married a Merovingian woman. Charles took Diana as a wife because she had more Merovingian blood than he did. All right, that was all set up. So the Merovingians are significant in history. Now, after they were deposed in 752, just a couple hundred years later, in 1099, Godfrey de Bouillon leads the First Crusade and takes Jerusalem from the Muslims. So he takes Jerusalem. Godfrey de Bouillon claims to have a great deal of Merovingian descent, which makes him Jewish, but he's working for the Catholic Church. All right. Let's face it, it's more power when you're working for the people running the show. So he's called the first king of Jerusalem, and he is also the leader of the Priory of Sion. It's just about 30 years later, 1129, the Knights Templar are officially announced, but it's basically an extension on what de Bouillon started. It's the military administrative arm of the Priory of Sion. Now, they lasted until 1312, and then the Catholic Church disbanded them. In 1307, they had a really bad year with King of France. But even though the Knights Templar were disbanded, you don't ever hear anything of the Priory of Sion being disbanded. If anything, you hear about other groups that are similar and had similar registry, like the Rosicrucians, which means Rosy Cross. There we go again. And you look at their symbol, it is even-sided. All right. So de Bouillon, who claimed to be Merovingian, was the first Grand Master of the Priory of Sion. At the time is 1,000 years after Christ. You go on and you look at who other Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion were. And by the way, the Priory of Sion could very well be where we get the protocols that were leaked by Nilus in Russia. Anyways, the Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion include Robert Flood, Francis Bacon, who was a political opponent of King James, a New Ager, wrote New Atlantis in regards to America being the place of the New World Order. He was very likely the actual pen behind Shakespeare's work. Leonardo da Vinci was another one. And finally, Isaac Newton. Oh yes, and Victor Hugo for a famous one. Isaac Newton. All of these guys were Merovingian descent to be a Grand Master of the Priory of Sion. So they were all Jewish. Okay, even though they would say they were Catholic. To be Jewish, I mean, the Jews have been kicked out of more than 100 countries for various reasons, ranging from predatory lending practices to slave trade to literally ritual human sacrifice and abduction of children. Okay, whether or not you believe those charges, maybe these countries are just being anti-Semitic. But when you look at the history, especially in Europe, Eastern Europe, a lot of the people who claim to be Jews aren't even Semitic. They're a Polish-Turkish mix, Russian-Turkish mix. When you read Arthur Kessler, a Jew, and his book, The 13th Tribe, you get a much better understanding of this whole thing. So, you've got all of these Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion, including Isaac Newton. Now, they all studied Kabbalah a great deal. I mean, Da Vinci was into digging up dead bodies, although we glorify that now. Newton was wanting to put the sun at the center and take us away from Genesis chapter 1, the firmament, and the description given for the creation. Wanted to make us a speck in a vast universe, very insignificant. All right. Onward, we go to the Jesuits. Let's stop at 1492. I mentioned Francis Bacon wanting to make America the New World for the New World Order. In 1492, we had the Spanish Inquisition. And there were tons of Jews, Sephardic Jews, getting kicked out of Spain and other countries. So rather than up and move, a lot of them just converted and became crypto-Jews and officially Catholics, but not really. One of them was a wealthy Basque Marrano Jew named Ignatius Loyola, who just 50 years after the Inquisition founded the Jesuit order, which is more occultism, Kabbalistic practices, and under the hidden guise of Catholicism. 1491, he founded the Jesuits. Now, 1541. 2 years later, Nicholas Copernicus died. So to say Copernicus was a Jesuit, it might be a stretch as far as the years go and the lineup of timing, but it's no doubt he was greatly influenced by the same thinking. Copernicus, the name is rooted in copper. He was Polish and rich. All right, Copperfield. David Copperfield was a Jew. Goldstein, Silverman. All these precious metal names are favorites of Jews. And we see it everywhere. And it's probably because they have done a lot of merchant work with precious metals. They've gotten rich by them. They hold them in high priority, typically, as a people, as a religion. Copernicus was Polish, which is where the Ashkenazi were really concentrated at the time. So was he a Jew? Very well could have been. A crypto-Jew, hiding because of inquisitions and things like that. Anyways, he put the sun at the center of the universe in modern thought, even though he was really just taking ideas from his professors. Copernicus and Newton. Newton definitely a Jew, Merovingian. Copernicus likely an Ashkenaz Jew. All right. We go on also, after Columbus comes to America for the New World, and he wasn't proving the world was round. That's a bunch of baloney. Then you have people like Benjamin Franklin, upstanding citizens within American society, a Rosicrucian, again, helping with the New World. It all ties together. One famous Jesuit from Ingolstadt, Germany, who was a Jew, Adam Weishaupt, started the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati, in 1776. So they all tie together really very well. If you want to talk about the Jesuits and Jews, we could talk about Loyola's secretary, Polanco, a Jew. His general, who became the next leader of the Jesuits after Loyola, was Linnaeus, another Jew. It's like looking into the communist revolution. Yeah, it was Russian, but it was led almost entirely by Jews. Okay, kind of like our Congress is today in America. Kind of like the president's cabinet has been for I don't know how many presidential terms recently. So there you have a good history of Jews after Jesus, all the way up until recently. They are behind the flat earth movement, or excuse me, the globe movement. They're opposed to the flat earth movement. They are also opposed to Christianity in general. When you read the Talmud, they'll tell you the Torah is their number one book. But you can't interpret the Torah without the Talmud. So you tell me which one has authority. I tell you it's Talmud in their mind. The Talmud says horrible things about Jesus, horrible things about how they can treat Gentiles, horrible things about how they can treat children and women. And they don't like it being translated into English because they don't want you to know what it says. I don't know about any of you, but I've never met a Jew who believes that there was a literal Adam and Eve or a worldwide flood. Not unless they're a Messianic Jew, which is called a Christian. All right? Once you take Jesus, you're a Christian. Whether you want to call yourself that or not. To keep the Jewish title is kind of a racist thing. Okay, Jesus said neither Jew nor Gentile, neither Jew nor Greek, Scythian or barbarian. Who is a Jew but he that is a Jew inwardly? Circumcision availeth nothing. All right? It's either you have the Son, you can have the Father if you have the Son. But if you have not the Son, you have not the Father. So the religion of the Jews, and that's what it is a religion, is Talmudic. It is anti-Christ. It's anti-Bible completely. To think that God holds them above us because of who their Father is to ignore everything Jesus said and everything that was written in the epistles. Jesus said he could raise children of Abraham in the stones. The promise of Abraham was to Abraham's seed, being Jesus, not seeds. And those who follow Jesus are heirs to that promise. Not a bunch of people who follow the Talmud and hate Jesus. I'm not the racist for saying this. It's a religion. It's not a race. You, if you believe that the Jews are, God's people because of their race, you are the racist. You are the hater. I pray for the Jews that they will receive Jesus, be converted, and be pulled from hell, from a certain destination in hell. I pray for their salvation because I do love them, just as I do anyone. Thank you.